Boom shakalaka. This is probably the most valuable video you could watch about Ethereum and Cardano right now. In today's video, I am joined by Devere from Crypto FOMO, who I would like to affectionately refer to as an Ethereum and Cardano expert, although he doesn't like me calling him one. I found that usually experts don't. And we're going to be talking about Ethereum and Cardano and everything that's going on with the projects that's going to blow your mind. You'll definitely want to stay tuned. Boom shakalaka, what's going on, everybody? I'm joined today by Devere of Crypto FOMO. What's going on, bud?
I'm good. It's good to see you again, Randall. Been a while. How are you doing so far?
I am doing great. I am loving this bullish reversal that we're having recently, because for a while there was a lot of bear porn, as some people like to call it, going on. But I'm stoked, and I am really excited to talk with you today because I look at you as kind of like an expert of what's going on with Ethereum, with Cardano, and I'm sure everybody wants to know what is going on and what can they look forward to.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I don't know how much I like the expert tag, but yeah, I've been pretty happy with how we've been doing with ETH and Cardano over the last year. And yeah, it's been really interesting just to see the market dropping. And a lot of people were saying like, oh, this is going much lower. It's going to zero, right? We've been seeing a lot of that chatter over and over again. And then we're starting to see funding rates consistently negative for a while, which historically was a really good sign of like bottoming happening. And then now with ETH, we have a lot of upgrades coming up. We have the entire ETH ecosystem just really thriving right now. We're at the point where we have protocols on top of ETH, like DeFi protocols that are making like millions of dollars a day. And this is like a really big development. So like, it's hard to be really bearish when you see that, because if you would have told me that a few years ago, like I would have believed you, but it would have been really hard to imagine that. Whereas like a few years ago, we didn't think if ETH was even going to succeed. We didn't think it was going to be around. And now we're seeing those protocols like thriving even during the so-called like strong correction, right? So, and then at the same time, we're seeing with Cardano, we're seeing the smart contracts launch. So we have all the anticipation for Cardano. And Cardano is really interesting because there's no real network effects yet because the product is not live, but at the same time, you have strong community effects, I would say. So like throughout the community, you're seeing a lot of support. And we did see Grayscale adding Cardano to their mixed product as well, like just a few days ago. So we do see like Cardano getting more legitimacy and all of that. And I think that just Ethereum thriving so much is really bullish for Cardano as well, because people look at Ethereum and they're like, okay, we kind of missed that boat, or it's kind of like really expensive, or they see all that potential and they look for a cheaper Ethereum, and then they go to Cardano. And then also like startup founders. I mean, you're at the point where if you launch a product on Ethereum, it's going to do good. But if you launch a project on Cardano, I think it's going to get a lot of hype just because it's on Cardano, just because it has that community. So I've seen projects like I invest in startups. I'm an angel investor, right? So I kind of see the inside out of a lot of projects. And I would say from my experience, looking at the projects like the Cardano projects that are launching, they're going to do well just because they're on top of Cardano. So the community is really excited right now to throw money at Cardano and Cardano projects. So I'm really excited to see the Cardano ecosystem going live. And ironically, like it gives Cardano a shot of competing with Ethereum, like having that strong headwind from supporters. This is a really big deal. So I think with Ethereum, we have VIP 1559 coming in the next 10 days, right? So that should. And so right now, I was just looking at it today, so I still remember the numbers. You have around 22,000 Ether created a day. Let me share my screen and show you. You have around 22,000 Ether created every day. So if you actually look at the stats, that's the inflation. And with the AP 1559, that's going to drop from 22,300 Ether to 15,700. So that's going to be 7,000, almost 7,000 Ethereum less sold on the market less every day. Like this is a huge amount. This is like more than $10 million every single day. So it's hard not to be bullish at that, because we did see Bitcoin historically, like with the inflation, we did see Bitcoin every 4 years doing somewhere between like a 10 to a 50x around the halving, right? We did see that big increase. So if we have half of the inflation, right, a 30% drop is almost like, it's a bit more than half of like a Bitcoin inflation, something like that, because Bitcoin halving drops 50%. So if we saw Bitcoin do like a 10 to 50x every 4 years, I mean, if Ethereum's going to have that, then it should go up like at least like a double, like it should at least double, you know what I mean? Like, so at that point, like you could really make some interesting arguments that Ethereum could be highly, highly undervalued with that sense. And you just see it in the stats. Like if the IP 1559 was live in the last year, like we would have burned almost 3 million ETH. So I mean, what would be the price of ETH if that was live? And then also you just look at the value of ETH, right? I'm looking here at the crypto fees, and it's showing you that, okay, so ETH is generating around $4.3 million a day in revenue. And then Uniswap on top of ETH is generating like $2.8 million a day in revenue. So it's like more than half of ETH, right? And so you have all these things thriving on top of ETH. And you also look at, when it comes to Cardano, what's interesting is you look at PancakeSwap. I think it's here on this page. No, it's not on this page. You look at PancakeSwap, they just basically they copied Uniswap and they made like $1 billion, right? So you look at Cardano launching right now, and you have this battle of like, what's going to be the PancakeSwap of Cardano, right? So you just launch that. You can make like $1 billion. You could create like $1 billion company relatively easily if you become the go-to like Uniswap, PancakeSwap, or Cardano. So I think there's going to be like a gold rush on top of Cardano when they do launch, but I still want to see them launch. But the point is like you look at all of this innovation, and it's hard to be bearish with that, with the supply dropping. And then also on the point of DeFi, I think DeFi could be really undervalued, man, because if you just look at coin market cap right now, you look at the market cap ratio of like Uniswap to ETH. So for example, the earning ratio roughly is like 2.8 or like almost 2.9 almost to 4.3, right? So that's a ratio of like, I think it's like 0.6, something like that. It's more than half. But if you look at the market cap ratio, you see that ETH is 271 billion. You see that Uniswap is 13 billion. So 271, 13. So the market cap ratio is actually 1 to 22, something like that. So the market cap ratio is roughly like 0.04, 0.05, but the earning ratio is 0.6. So they're almost like 10 times different when you just combine, like when you just compare the revenue and the market cap. So I'm not saying Uniswap is 10 times undervalued versus ETH, but I am saying that this difference is very interesting. And then also when you look at the charts, like if you look at Uniswap versus ETH chart, it also looks pretty good to me. I'll show you. I'm just going to open this here, Uniswap to ETH. You can just see that it had a big bear market versus ETH, right? It dropped a lot. Like you can see from the bottom, from the top to the bottom, it dropped 64% in like 60 days. It had like pretty big drop. And then right now we also hit like the support level versus ETH, and then we're starting to pump from it. And not only that, but we actually had not really like a double bottom, but it does look a little bit like it, right? And we're starting to rally from here. So I would say DeFi in the Ethereum ecosystem looks undervalued, and I would say ETH in the overall crypto ecosystem looks undervalued. And I think that on Cardano, there's going to be a lot of gold grabs right now. And for me, as an angel investor, like I am looking at Cardano projects, and I am looking for that to do well. I'm looking for those projects to do well in that ecosystem. Just because we saw with Binance Smart Chain, we saw them doing really well, right? And now I'm also doing that with Solana as well. Whereas before I had like doubts on Solana, I missed out on Solana entirely. I never held it. But now you see all of this growth and you're like, okay, maybe this is worth something. And you see a lot of like good projects popping up. So yeah, I've given you a lot to think about, but I hope this makes sense to everybody that listens.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot to think about. I'm curious what you think about the trickle down effect of DeFi to Ethereum, because we saw a lot of growth on DeFi projects, particularly in the last part of the bull run, where they went from nothing to multi-million-dollar market caps in a week's time. But we didn't really see that much movement in terms of Ethereum, even though most DeFi projects are on Ethereum nowadays. So what do you have some type of sense of kind of a trickle down effect of how all of that money in DeFi will come to Ethereum, if it will at all? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Sure. So this is really interesting to me because it's kind of like the value accumulation. Like, where does the value accrue? Does it accrue at the application layer? Does it accrue at like the blockchain layer? And I think that it will go, obviously it will go to both. I mean, you see right now, Ethereum is going up, the applications layers are going up. But I think Ethereum still, people didn't realize that, because until now, Ethereum was inefficient in a way, because you had all of this money being paid to miners. You had like $4.3 million a day that was paid to miners, right? And then now Ethereum is going to become a lot more efficient in the sense that you're going to switch to proof of stake. It's going to take a lot less resources. And now you could use all that revenue, a lot of this revenue, like 90% of it, you could use that for EIP 1559, just burning. And then also just like move to proof of stake. You need a lot less inflation to make the network run successfully. So we're going to have a lot more money suddenly being freed for the Ethereum ecosystem. And then what we're going to do with it is very simple. We're just going to burn it, right? Or we're just going to issue less ETH. So I think that until now, we didn't see value accrue as much, but it's going to happen a lot more because a lot of that value just went to miners, and Ethereum is still just getting started in that sense. So I think Croissant was talking about it here from Squish. He was talking about after we're going to see the merge in the ETH 155 now, we're going to see a drop in inflation. Instead of having 22,300 Ether printed every day, we're only going to see 2,600 Ether printed every day. So this is a huge difference. So obviously, all of this growth, all of this less ETH being like sold on the market, that's going to translate to the price going up, and then just a lot of value accrual. So right now, Ethereum didn't capture a lot of that value because a lot of it went to miners, proof of work. It was just really expensive to run the Ethereum network, but now it's going to become a lot cheaper, and then we're going to see the value accrue more. But I will say also, just when you look at the Ethereum chart, I mean, it's just looking really bullish over the last few years. It's just been growing a lot faster than Bitcoin. So, I mean, just in 2017, we saw Ethereum go from $10 to $1,300, something like it did like 130x in 1 year or something crazy like that. Like you see here, started the year at like less than $10, went all the way in January, a little bit more than a year after, to $1,350, right? It did like 172x, something like that. Depends on where you measure it from. But we do see the value growing up really, really quickly. We do see it outperforming Bitcoin, but it is bigger now. So it's not going to do 170x, but it's still going up faster. And then also, even when you look at the ETH versus Bitcoin chart, you can see that it's a very bullish chart. It's just exiting this multi-year kind of like accumulation, this rounding bottom. It just kind of finished forming that. And we're just starting to break out over here, right? So I would expect us to go and break a lot higher. And if you just look at the previous ETH BTC chart, like you can see it pretty much had this resistance line here. And then once we broke from that, we just had like a massive rally for ETH. And we just recently broke from that like a few months ago. So now you would expect to see this big rally going up. So I would say the chart looks really good. This multi-year accumulation. I think we also have here like a reverse head and shoulders, depending on how you look at it. Like you can see this, something like this, if I recall correctly. But we have like a really bullish pattern here, exiting like multi-year accumulation. So the chart looks really good. The fundamentals look really good. And I also like tell you, just talking to people, very few people understand what the difference in the price of an asset is going to be if you drop the sell pressure by 90%. Like if you tell me, okay, an asset costs $100, you drop the sell pressure by 90%, what's the price of the asset, right? I don't think people will necessarily understand it could mean like a 10x to the price. It could also mean like a 50x, 100x. Like it could be a really big deal, because if you just take like the 90x% drop it's like 3 drops of 50%, like what we've seen in the Bitcoin holdings. So you have like 3 Bitcoin holdings all at once. And historically, we saw every Bitcoin holding, we saw like a 10 to a 50x, right? So that happened every 4 years. So it didn't happen at once, but still, if you take 10 to 50x to the power of 3, that is at the very least, that's 1,000x growth. Now, because Ethereum is going to have that in 1 year instead of like 12 years, it's not going to be 1,000x growth. Probably it's going to be less than that. But even if it's like 20x growth, it's massive. I mean, that means like what, $80,000 Ethereum. And that is roughly like my target. I think my long-term target for ETH is probably like above 100K, something like $500,000, something like that. I think people just don't really understand where we're at, and that just makes me more bullish on that. So to answer your question, I think the value will accrue more to ETH moving forward. But also, when you look at 2017, value did accrue very, very quickly. Ethereum did 130x. It's just that this year so far, we haven't seen it yet. And even if you look at ETH, like in 2017, you'll see that the big rally started, I think, in March 2017. So actually, it should have happened by now. Yeah, it looks like ETH hasn't had that big rally yet. But let's see. It's also like, yeah, the market doesn't always repeat the same way. But at the end of the day, what gives me a lot of confidence is the DeFi looking great, and just those changes to the inflation. I think this is really bullish. I mean, just look at Bitcoin, like halving chart, like every chart in history. You just look at what happened if you bought the halving. It may have dropped like 20%, but it went up like almost in a straight line afterwards. So I'm just really excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks great, especially that chart showing where it just broke out from the multi-year resistance there. That's pretty awesome. I'm curious. There was an interview that I just watched recently with Michael Saylor and Benjamin Cohen, and Ben Cohen kept asking about portfolio management. Like everybody, I think a lot of people want a moon coin, and that's why a lot of the meme tokens are popular right now. But like, do you have what are your thoughts in terms of portfolio management? Do you think it's worthwhile to pick up, mostly large cap tokens and a few speculative coins, or more speculative coins, or maybe just all Bitcoin? Or what are your thoughts on portfolio management?
So to answer the question, it's like I've always believed in life that like less is more, and you kind of follow like highly concentrated bets. And I mean, if you think about it, like you starting a business is a highly concentrated bet. Like you picking like your wife is a highly concentrated bet. So like I think in life it's mostly about like taking like a sniper approach rather than a shotgun approach with most of your money. And then like with 10-20%, you can kind of take like a shotgun approach and try a bunch of things. So for me, like I've been my first year and a half investing in crypto, I was just all Bitcoin. I was kind of like panicking. I didn't know what I was doing. Like everything was going down in flames. I was like, oh shit, like I know what I'm doing. Just stick to Bitcoin. Like that should work. And then 7 months ago, I kind of took like a really big position on ETH. I think started with like 40% ETH and then just gradually increased that. And that obviously worked really well. So I think that you need to find like your high conviction bet, and that could be like one or two bets. And then you need to go on that and just watch that. So you need to really understand that very well. And then at the same time, so you have that high conviction bet, you could almost have like a little bit of like insurance bets against that as well. So let's say I'm really bullish on ETH, and if Ethereum doesn't fail, it doesn't work, right? If it fails, what will succeed, right? So you look at Cardano, you look at Solana, you look at Polkadot. Polkadot's a good one, and you kind of hold like small positions of those, even if it's like like 2% in each of those, and just hold that. And in case Ethereum doesn't work out, then you still have that. And then the beautiful thing is if ETH does succeed, like you will probably still see those coins pump. Like you'll probably see Polkadot pumping and like all of that. So they could it could all be a win-win. So that's what I think in that regard. And I think that just a lot of I've talked to hundreds of retail investors in my life, and a lot of them told me like their strategies and what they've been doing, their way of thinking. And I think that a lot of people have this spray and pray approach when they start in crypto. And I noticed that veterans have less of that. And usually if you meet a crypto multimillionaire, they'll tell you that it's mostly been, they're either like a Bitcoin millionaire or an Ethereum millionaire, but there's been like a one coin that they were like heavy on and that they hodled that. And that's the one that made them like the bulk of their money. And then when you meet like retail investors, they're not sure what they're doing. Usually they split with across a lot of coins. They're not really sure which one's going to do well. And that doesn't really work well. And by the way, on the previous topic, I forgot to mention, will value accrue to Ethereum? In the early days of the internet, we saw the same question with Google, believe it or not. People were like, how is Google going to make money? How is Facebook going to make money? Like, this is just, they're just showing people search traffic. Like it wasn't really clear how they're going to monetize. And now 20 years later, it's almost like I saw someone talking about some VC was saying like, how is Google not going to make money? Or how is this company is going to make money besides Google? And it's almost like completely flipped. And I will say that the house wins. So like the platform that has the users is the one with the most power. So I think like, if you look at search engines for like flights, right? If you look at, I saw an article, it was really interesting. It was looking at the business model behind like search engines. Like you go to CAC.com, Skyscanner.com, you want to buy a flight. They show that those search engines are actually making some of the most money because they control the traffic. So it's almost like who has the attention has the money. And then the companies on the back end that are providing the flights don't have as much profit margin. So I think when you own the traffic, when you own the visitors and all that, like you kind of have a lot of the power. So I think even if Ethereum's revenue model wasn't as efficient, and now, even though it is going to be really efficient now, even if it wasn't, I think because they had the people, the traffic, the users, the ecosystem, the trust, the brand name, the network effects, then Ethereum would have figured it out at some point. So if we go back to the example of Google, even if Google didn't realize like, oh, you make search ads, like I think even if they just had all those bunch of people like using their website, I think at some point someone else would have used it. So it would have been like Facebook, Yahoo, YouTube started putting ads, and they would just copy it. And because they have the users, they're just like, okay, like we could do it right now. So I mean, so I think them having the most users is really bullish, and that brand name, because this is this is also like money we're talking about. It's not like Google where it's like, oh, I want to look for like, like a good restaurant in my area. It's like, it's like you putting your own money on the blockchain. So like network effects and like brand name are much more important. So the point is that people are going to be less likely to leave Ethereum as they're likely to leave Google for a better search engine. They're much more loyalty in that sense. So I think it looks good.
Yeah, I really like that answer. You can definitely see the network effect kind of taking its effect in cryptocurrency, and you're not just investing in a service, you're actually investing in money, which is pretty awesome. And then your portfolio advice, I like that, and that reminds me of something very much of what I've heard from some investors, because everybody, when they're first dipping their toes into money, they hear all about diversification. And so like everybody has this whole idea of diversification, you need to diversify this and diversify that, but that's only half of the saying. So like the saying that I've heard is you need to specialization, or picking a single thing to accumulate wealth, and then diversification to preserve wealth. So yeah, like what you were just saying, you pick one or two things and that will actually make you your money. And then once you have the money, then you can diversify it a bit. And that way, you don't lose all your eggs in the basket.
Yeah, and I saw also like I'm not still sure about it as much. I also saw, I think it was Peter Druckenmiller, like there was like this multi-billionaire like hedge fund investor. He was saying that he found like the only quality that great investors had in common is having those big concentrated bets, like high conviction bets, where they have the balls to go and like find this opportunity, right? That I'm really bullish on Ethereum, right? So I look at Ethereum and I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna go big on this. And ETH is like now my like more than 50% of my portfolio, right? So I think even if outside of crypto, like it's the same thing. And he was talking about with his mentor, he was saying, which was another billionaire when he was younger, he told him about this really good trade. I think it was the 90s or 80s. And that mentor and then Peter or whatever the investor was, I forget, I'm not sure if it was Peter Druckenmiller or not, but he told them, I want to go all in on this bet, right? And then the mentor told them, you're stupid. You should go 2x leverage on that bet. Like you should borrow money to go heavier on that bet because that bet is so good. So I thought this was really interesting in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. Because that, it oftentimes when you get to that point where you're so confident about something, like you look at Michael Saylor, like he is by far one of the largest proponents for Bitcoin right now. He's saying, like literally just have Bitcoin. Everything else is a sinking ship. You really just want Bitcoin. And it's kind of that conviction where you've done the research, you've convinced yourself that you're willing to take that bet. And even if you lose that bet, you knew that you did the best thing you knew was possible at that time.
Yeah, that's true. And it was funny. Did you see his clip where it was going from like, there is no second best? And then like a few weeks later, he went to like, oh, there's a place for everyone, like rainbows and sunshines, like 2 weeks later.
Well, everybody wants him to say like, what else? And he's just like, listen, I always see it kind of like what happens in the United States on Black Friday, where we have these stories of, like people getting trampled for a flat screen TV because Best Buy only has 10 flat screen TVs for $100. Or like the Tickle Me Elmo, where people are paying outrageous amounts for them, or PlayStation 5 this last holiday season, where people were paying 3-4 times the price of a PlayStation 5 just because they couldn't get any. And I think that potentially with Bitcoin, we might have the same type of thing, maybe not immediately, but certainly down the line when we have a few more halvings. But
yeah, yes, sir, go ahead.
I didn't see that stuff about the EIP 1559. So that should be really exciting. What's coming with Ethereum?
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. And also, like, if I was Michael Saylor, like, I would be really uncomfortable right now because with ETH, it's like Bitcoin has like this really like set in stone, like predictive, inflation schedule and all that. But Ethereum's inflation rate is going to be lower than that of Bitcoin's really soon. I think it's either with EIP 1559 or it's going to be with the merge, which is coming in the next 10 months or so. So in the next 10 months, like ETH is going to be like, in a sense, a better store of value than Bitcoin. Like it's really arguable. Like it's a very big term. Like what's a store of value? Different people have different definitions. But Ethereum, you could make the argument for that a lot of those hedge funds, like they're going to prefer to hold productive assets as well. Like you could take Ethereum right now, you could stake it on, you will be able to stake it on ETH 2.0 if the merge. I mean, you could do it right now, you just cannot get it out yet. So like you could do those things that you cannot do with Bitcoin. So for someone conservative, having the ability to earn another 5% a year, staking their ETH that they're not going to have on Bitcoin, this is actually a pretty big deal. I mean, you look at hedge funds, I mean, the difference between like 10% returns a year and 15% returns a year, that's a huge difference. So you could make the argument for them that like ETH is going to be a lot more sexy, and then the inflation rate's going to drop a lot lower. And then also like you look at the Bitcoin community, you see a lot of people that are really turning you off. Elon Musk was talking about that, how Bitcoin maxis are kind of pissing him off.
and yet Elon's kind of pissing everybody off.
yeah, he's he's talking about how Bitcoin maxis are. That's true, man. That's really true. He's talking about how Bitcoin maximalists are kind of making him like dislike Bitcoin. And I don't know, like you look at like hedge funds looking at that. We're starting to see countries adopting Bitcoin. But I mean, you look at like derivatives or like markets that are much bigger than gold, and you're like, well, countries didn't necessarily adopt this, but still it's much bigger than gold. So I think if ETH is going to be a bigger market cap than Bitcoin, it's going to be like more productive asset than Bitcoin, and the inflation rate's going to be lower than Bitcoin, even if it's not predictably set in stone. Then you can make an argument that all of that money might go to Ethereum instead of Bitcoin. I mean, one of the big reasons that people go to Bitcoin is because it's the most known one. It's the one of the strongest brand name. But, you know, fast forward 3-4 years from now, that might not be the case if everyone's hearing about Ethereum all the time. I mean, you think about the stock market, you think about the NASDAQ, you think about like banks, like venture capital. You hear about that a lot more than you hear about gold nowadays. You know, gold is kind of something niche that old people used to preserve value that doesn't really go up, and it's just losing people money pretty much over the last decade. Like it wasn't really a good hold. So if Bitcoin becomes that niche, that might not be the best thing. And let me see if I can find it for you. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you the Ethereum inflation as well. Like when you look at the chart of ETH inflation, like people say like Ethereum doesn't have like a set in stone inflation schedule like Bitcoin does, right? With Bitcoin, you know the inflation rate of Bitcoin in exactly 60 years from now. Like you could look at the chart and you could tell me that. But with ETH, it's not set in stone, but at the same time, you can see that ever since ETH was created like 5-6 years ago, right? When the mainnet went live 5-6 years ago, it was created around 7 or 8 years ago. When the mainnet went live, you can see that the inflation rate very predictably went down from like 14.5%. It went clearly down. It's very clear for me when I look at it, it's very clear that they're just trying to drop the inflation rate as much as possible. And I think even if you go to Ethereum's website, they're saying it clearly. They're saying that their monetary policy is that, let me see if I can find Ethereum monetary policy. Yeah, I can't really find it right on the get-go, but maybe I can't. But they clearly say that they're trying to lower the inflation rate as much as possible. Let me see if I can find it here. Historical, yeah, I think it might be over here. But they're saying very, very clearly that they're trying to minimize that as much as possible here. Ethereum's minimum necessary issuance policy. Here, Ethereum's had a history of reducing issuance to this estimated minimums. The network has never increased issuance, right? So it's part of their effort to reduce issuance to minimum amounts without sacrificing security. So I think when you look at that and you look at this, right, like the results don't lie, like the numbers don't lie. You can see the inflation rate dropping down. Like if I show you this chart and I'm telling you, draw me the continuation of this chart, you're just going to continue drawing it going down. It's very clearly so. So in that sense, I'm also very comfortable with Ethereum monetary policy, even though it's not set in stone. And I mean, look at like Facebook, look at Google, look at Amazon. Like, do they have like certain things set in stone? No, like they have like the community, like in their case, it's very centralized, right? But in the case of like a DAO, like a decentralized organization, you're going to have the community decide on what they want. And what the community wants, the community always wants to make money. So, and what makes more money is people just lowering the inflation. It's just pretty simple. So we're all in the same boat in that sense.
Yeah, sounds awesome. So yeah, I'm definitely excited about Ethereum. And did you say when EIP 1559 is taking place?
I saw it's going to happen in like 8-9 days or something like that. It's
so that could be like a huge move for Ethereum within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we already started rallying. Like ETH BTC already started to bottom out and it started to rally, which was actually pretty nice. And we'll see, because it could be also like kind of like a downer, like it might not, just nothing happen. And then it kind of takes time for the price to, that's what we saw with Bitcoin holdings. We saw it like immediately after the halving, it's almost like a no event, if I recall correctly. And then after that, like a month or two later, then it starts going up and then people start FOMOing in.
So this could almost be similar to purchasing Bitcoin at the time of a halving, potentially.
Yeah, exactly. That could be really similar. I mean, just look at assets that are publicly trading. You look at their, like what happens to them after you drop their sell pressure by like 30, 50%. And you'll see that probably every time like it goes up, you know, it's pretty simple. And I would love to hear like a calculation on how it would affect the price, right? I think that's interesting as well, because I think the stock to flow ratio is basically saying something like a 10x for every 50% drop every 4 years, something like that. Like that's how we did that. So I mean, if you have like a 30% drop, I'm guessing that's at least a 3x, like at the bare minimum. And if you have like a triple halving, then that's like moon Lambos and sunshine, pretty much.
Yeah, that's what we're all looking for. Talking about moon Lambos and sunshine cream and everything, the Cardano. So I would say they probably have one of the largest groups of fanboys, aside from probably Dogecoin right now. So what's going on with Cardano? What's to look forward to with that?
Sure. So they're going to have like the smart contracts going live next month. That's the schedule. And then we're already seeing, like, for me, what's really impressive is not only did we have like the retail investor community really excited about that, just investors in general, but we also see projects that are really excited to build on Cardano. Like we covered on my channel, like I invested in a bunch of them. Like we really see that growth from a lot of projects that are saying, you know what, Cardano is our bread and butter. We're going to build a Cardano ecosystem. We're going to go on that. So for me, it was a really good sign to see that. And I mean, if they're going to work smoothly, for me, like I want to see if they're going to launch smoothly, because with Ethereum, they have a really good track record of like shipping product and it like Ethereum not breaking and all that. With Cardano, we still don't have it. It was all testnets until now. So we need to see if they're going to do it. Like, for example, if you're a hacker, Cardano launches something on the testnet, you find a vulnerability, you're like, oh, I can make $2 million with this vulnerability. You're not going to reveal that to the Cardano community until they go on mainnet, and then you do your thing and you make 2 mil, right? So I want to see Cardano going live. I want to see them getting tested in the real world with real money, and then we can talk. But with that being said, I think they will likely do fine. I think it will probably be okay. I don't think they'll have any major issues. And then after that, we're going to see the growth of projects on top of Cardano. I want to see, so for this year, it's very clear that Cardano is looking bullish. I mean, the chart's looking good. As long as they don't mess anything up, like we should go, like right now, I think we're like at $1.40. We should go to at least $5, probably like around $10 would be my target this year for Cardano. And then long term after that, like we need to see if projects are actually being used on top of Cardano. If like PancakeSwap is being used, right? Like you see people launching like scammy projects on Binance Smart Chain. I mean, it's a use case. I mean, it's a good thing. Like it's a good sign to see that, like people launching like stuff like that. I mean, that's what we saw in Ethereum 2017, right? And we saw with Bitcoin in 2013, we saw a lot of people like doing like illegal stuff with it, right? So it's a good use case, even though it's not like legal entirely. So it is what it is. So we need to see Cardano getting some sort of adoption, but it's looking good. We're already seeing those projects. But it's also funny for me as an investor in those projects. It's like, even though they're a Cardano project, they're launching on Ethereum. So it's like, you just send them like your Ethereum wallet and they send you the Ethereum token. And like, yes, they're going to have a bridge between Cardano and Ethereum, but it's kind of funny how that works. But with all due respect, like when you go back in time, Ethereum, I think, was the same thing. Like when they raised money, like you send them Bitcoins, you didn't send them Ethereum, right? So it started the same way in that sense. But yes, very bullish on Cardano. I think also like trying to pick like the go-to solutions on top of Cardano could be really profitable, like the Uniswap of Cardano, you know, like the all of those solutions, like the Aave of Cardano. You just look at those; they could be really profitable. I mean, just look at PancakeSwap, and then I think we had a few more projects on top of Binance Smart Chain that that also grew very, very well. So I'm really bullish on those two. The chart is looking fantastic. Charles Hoskinson is like the messiah for crypto investors. I don't know why people just love him. Like the dude, he's just charismatic as hell. Like I wouldn't have guessed unless people told me, because when I look at him, he's obviously a super smart guy and I would love to meet him in a lot of respect, but I don't see that messiah quality in him. But a lot of people do. And who am I to argue with the market? And at the end of the day, if 10,000 investors think something and they put their money there, it almost makes it a reality. Whether if they're right or wrong in the short term, it's almost becoming a reality. So I'm not going to argue with the trend, and definitely long Cardano. Yeah.
Cool. Just curious, since you mentioned looking for like the Uniswap and Aave of Cardano, do you have any ideas of projects that you've been looking at?
No, man. There's nothing like that. Like I know that. Let me share on my screen. Like I invested in. Let me see. It was UCAM. I think UCAM Finance has been growing. So they're kind of like Cardano Smart DeFi layer. They've been launching like with a lot of IDOs on top of them. Like I'll show you. Seen that.
Yeah, where can someone go to find out a lot of this information about the projects launching on Cardano?
Yeah, I think it's a bit hard to do that. You could see, well, I covered them on my channel, but that's kind of a bit of time consuming to check every video. But you could check like just look at the Cardano, like you could look at UCAM Razor on Twitter. Like you could actually check their Twitter here, and they talk about a lot of projects there. And then you can see here they have like Theos, DeFi, Nubius Finance, Legity, Igon, Card Wallet, like all those are coming on top of Cardano. It's funny, I think I actually listed in all of those, but you can see here they're just covering like all those projects that are coming up here, and you just need to follow. It's a bit hard. Like I know, for example, on Solana, you have this Twitter account. It's called Solanians, and they talk about a lot of things in the Solana ecosystem, right? So if you're an investor, you're looking for projects going live, like you could check that out and then kind of do a lot of like graphs like this and share a lot of projects. For Cardano, I haven't seen it yet. So the ground is still a little bit open in that sense. I think, yeah, we've seen a lot of projects pop up on Cardano, but it's a bit too early for me to say like it's getting a use case, it's getting adoption because the mainnet is not live yet. But with UCAM Finance, I can say that because they're already launching projects, even if they're launching right now. I'm pretty sure they're launching on Ethereum network. Even if they're launching there, like they're still, once Cardano goes live, they're going to launch there as well. So can't really think of other projects getting as much adoption yet. I think it's a bit too early, but I think it's a game worth playing. I think it's giving like just retail investors are just so excited about Cardano. I just think that like buying some small caps with good fundamentals could do pretty well, just buying them like off the market.
Mm-hmm. And for anybody who's watching, I'll put links to your channel down in the comments and in the description, just so that people can find your channel and they'll be able to find those videos. So we've been talking a lot about what's going on in Ethereum and what's going on in Cardano. And you know, personally, I'm pretty bullish about where we are in the market right now. But what type of feelings do you have about the general market and about what we all just went through for the past few months? And what are you feeling about this?
Yeah, it wasn't all roses and sunshine the last few months. That was funny. It was, I can tell you, just being in, so we've been in the market for a few years, both of us, right? And you kind of develop almost like the sixth sense of like when the market is capitulating, where it's too frothy and euphoric. And right now for me, going through this, it just felt like COVID 2020 all over again. Like the price having this big crash, a lot of people getting liquidated, a lot of people leaving the space, a lot of negativity. And then at the same time, funding rates consistently negative. And then you see the price slowly creeping up like that. Like this is very similar in that sense. So for me, if I had to, the model that I've been comparing it to is either like the COVID crash of March 2020 or Bitcoin crash from 10K to 4K and then went up, or to the mid bull markets correction that we've seen in 2017. Bitcoin drops from 3,000 to $1,800, 40% correction. A lot of people give up. And then the price reverses in 4 days, and then we continue the bull run like it never stopped. And then also like you saw that every bull market, you basically have like this mid bull market correction where a lot of people, like the dumb money kind of sells and leaves, and then the smart money has a chance to re-enter, right? They're like, okay, we had money on the sidelines, now it's time to re-enter. So I think this is it. I think that's where we're at. I think, like I said on the channel, like I think the bottom is in, and we're going to continue higher from here. And I think that even if I'm wrong, buying here is still going to look fantastic in 6 months. I think the risk reward is just like, look, man, like it could drop another 20% from the lows, but like, bro, we're talking about 1,000% gains like this year for Ethereum. Like we're talking about insane amounts of money to be made. Like, are you really going to miss like 1,000% rally because of a 20% possible drop? Like, where's the risk reward in that? Like, do you like you're not going to make it? You know what I mean? Like
not only that, but just like having, I always like to look at it even like a longer time frame. So something like 10, 20 years. Like there are these charts that I see all the time that compare Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies to the internet. And we're like right now 1997 in the internet. Like who on earth wouldn't want to buy Google and Amazon and all these and Facebook back in 1997 and just hold it till now? And it's just like that opportunity. It's hard to see it when you're in it, especially in crypto, because time moves so fast. You think like you're buying for the first time, you're buying Bitcoin for the first time in 2021, and you think you completely missed the whole entire thing. Well, it's like, this is really like, the Netscape era of money. So, just kind of broadening that time horizon and seeing that, buying now and is probably a good thing.
Yeah, and I think like that's a really good point, like developing the long-term time horizon, which is something I always encourage people I work with to do, but it's very difficult for newbies to think that. And it also really helps if you just use money that you don't need in the next 12 months. It's just like, for me with my capital, like I'm a simple guy, I'm really minimalistic. Like I'm just gonna need to invest that money anyways. So I don't need to use it like tomorrow or next week or in 6 months or so. So it makes it a lot easier as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And like some people that I told just to start dollar cost averaging, like that was the best thing. Because, I would tell them about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and they're like, yeah, but when's the best time to buy? And it's just like every single week or every single month, that's the best time to buy. And now 3-4 years later, they're just like, oh my gosh, like I've taken out my initial investment and I still have tens of thousands of dollars of this left. This is insane. And so it's really an awesome thing to kind of get involved in the space.
It's crazy, man. Like just being involved in the space is a huge gift. Like I feel like we're really blessed to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So we've talked about a whole bunch of other stuff. Anything else you want to talk about while we're chatting?
I think just keep it simple. I saw like a really rich crypto investor like Tetranode, who's been in the space for like 8 years or something. He was saying that his game plan ever since like 2016, 2017 was like just buy dollar cost average into Ethereum. And he thinks that to become a crypto millionaire, you just need 10 ETH, wait until ETH goes to 100K. And I think he has like the super basic plan that he said. And like, he also does a lot more complicated things, but he says like, look at the core, this is like 70-80% of what I'm trying to do here. And I think that keeping it simple, getting rich, I think that works really well, and it's pretty difficult. It's not that easy to keep it simple. I'm naturally a lazy person in a lot of ways. So that does help, but you got to know sometimes where you're like the main problem between doing something great,
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Like, I really love that you mentioned that, because oftentimes people will end up losing a lot of money trying to get rich quick. But if you just enter into the ecosystem and don't lose your money, in 6 years, you'll look back, you'll be 2 halvings down the road and you'll be like, oh my goodness, look at this. This is insane.
Yeah, and it's so painful. It's so painful to be right and still not make money. Like imagine like thinking ETH goes to 100K and then you like do some stupid stuff and then you lose like 70% of that and it goes to 100K and you're like, you made money, but you could have made so much more. And it's just like the worst feeling in the world, because you were right. Like you were right. It was going to go there. Like I have like my buddy that got me into crypto like a few years back. Like he was right about crypto. He started with a certain amount of BTC, and then now fast forward like 3-4 years later, he told me he's down 90% of his Bitcoins. Like he had a lot more Bitcoins. Like he should have been financially free right now. And he's not, sadly, because he did all those things. He chased all those things. He had to sell in the bear market. He had to sell because he didn't have a lot of savings. It wasn't working, And it has to suck, It has to, because you look at the price and you're like, I was right, and here I am, like still not like fine. Why am I not financially well off in that sense? So I think that's a really painful scenario, and I think that it happens to pretty much every crypto investor that doesn't make money in crypto, because everybody starts and they're like bullish on Bitcoin, or they're bullish on Ethereum, and they kind of get sidetracked. That's why so many people are so salty about crypto, like so salty. I think that it has to be the case.
Mm-hmm. But it's also a really good motivation to get a financial education. It's like, I know that from losing a lot of money, that's how I kind of learned to not lose money. And so that's like they say the 2 rules of investing. Rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, refer to rule number 1.
Yeah. That's smart. Yeah, that is real. So I've always been obsessed with like not losing money, or in crypto world, right? Not losing Bitcoin. And then recently, like in the last few months, I really became obsessed with not losing Ethereum, like not underperforming Ethereum, right? So so it's kind of like, it's funny how like the reserve currency status kind of changed in my portfolio. But it's always been the same focus, not lose money. 100% agree.
Well, that's great advice. Devere, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been like a very, very valuable interview for a lot of people, at least for myself. I know for a lot of people on my channel as well. So thank you so much for joining us. I will put links. Man. Yeah, I will put links to your channel down in the description and also in the pinned comments so people could check out Crypto FOMO. You're posting 2 videos a day now, so lots of content out there. So Devere.
Thank you so much, Randall. I'm going to link to it below this video too. It's always a pleasure to have you as a friend and then also like a fellow crypto investor and crypto YouTuber, man. Much love, man. Take care and we'll talk soon.
Right back at you.